What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back. As I mentioned in my pool predictions video, I did not really feel like I wanted to go too much further to do the power rankings in the same video. So here we are, power rankings exclusive coming at you guys, and this is more of a predictions as far as where I think teams will finish at CWL London. I'll kind of go over some of the things from the pool prediction video in case you missed that one or wanted a little bit of a recap on it. But mostly I'll be talking about these teams at full length. Let's go ahead and start digging right into it. Starting at the very bottom in the 16th spot. Well, I don't think it's much of a surprise to anybody. I have Elevat sitting here. They're going to be a top 16 team, and I don't see them winning a game here coming through CWL London. They have Midnight, Heretics, and UIU in their pool, which you would think that's going to be their best opportunity at finding a win. And I don't see them getting a win there. And then it'll just come down to whoever they play in the losers bracket. Based on my predictions, they would be playing up against a team that would be like Nygma 6 or potentially Optic or Reciprocity, depending on what happens in Pool A. They'll be the bottom from Pool D. I think they play up against the third place team from Pool A. That's not going to be an easy one for them to go through. I have them losing out there. So this team drops technically when they were accelerate from 15th down to 16th. In my 15th spot, and you know, I hesitated a little bit to put this team this far down, but the fact of the matter is I just don't see them having enough practice to be a formidable opponent here at London. I have Denial sitting in the 15th spot. Again, that roster is Joe, Rated, Bance, Alex, and Brack. It could be a good roster, but again, at the end of the day, I don't see it ever being a great roster. I just don't know how you could ever expect it. There's no real all-star potential on this team. I mean, Brack, again, it was a semi-pro player that got called up and made it through the PLQ this year. Alex didn't make it through with Team Sween. And then Rated, Bance, and Joe, it's hard to really get a true identity from them since there were so many issues with Red Reserve previously. So I don't see this team doing all that well. I don't have them winning a game against Splice, Luminosity, or Genji in the pools, which would then put them, again, pretty considerably down. And they should be playing up against whoever the number 3 team is, I believe, from Pool C, which you would figure would be FaZe Evil Geniuses in some capacity, and I don't see them winning a game there either. So I have them sitting at the 15th spot. Not great for Denial. I don't think this roster is the answer at all. Both teams, Elevat and Denial, had just came in and decided to make full cell swaps, and I don't think any of these rosters are going to be doing very well for them. Jumping up to the 14th spot, taking a look at Midnight. And again, this team I think will do well eventually, but I was surprised that they didn't make a single roster swap on their main roster at all. They do bring in Saint as coach from E-United, which was kind of a big pickup, to be completely honest. But the fact of the matter is this team lacks an identity as well, and we've seen that pretty considerably throughout when this roster existed, from Fort Worth and then through the cross-divisional. They didn't have a terrible cross-div play whatsoever, having beat 100 Thieves and Enigma 6, a 3-2 scoreline versus 100 Thieves, and a 3-1 versus Enigma 6, but they did lose 1-3 to Splice, and then the 2-3 versus Denial did kind of hurt a little bit. You would have loved to have finished that cross-div off 3-1, but that would not be the case. So they'll be going up against Elevat, UIU, and Heretics. Again, a great pool for them to be in, but I just only see them winning one game there, and that's up against Elevat. Moving up to the 13th spot, taking a look at Evil Geniuses. And again, I was praising Evil Geniuses for making good roster swaps back when I did my Rostermania ratings video a couple of days ago. But the biggest thing is I don't see this roster being considerable enough to make a full run at anything beyond a top 16. Maybe they finish top 12, but I think that would still be a stretch. They'll be going up against a very difficult pool with FaZe, Envy, and E-United. I think they could play Spoiler maybe in this pool, but again, you take a look at it, and it's Apathy, you think is, okay, good addition, but he hasn't played super well. JCap, okay, decent addition, but he hasn't played super well this game. And Phantoms, who played well with FC Black against open teams. So there's still a lot of question marks, I think, as far as what this team will do and how much they've been able to grow since they were put together. You would think that this team is mostly being headed up by Attach, in synergy, of course, with their coach, Revan. Exotic is just along for the ride as a solid player, which he is. It just comes down to, can this team find an identity, and can they actually fulfill a little bit of that momentum that they're going to need to get through their pool, and then beyond that, which they will likely, as we anticipate, be in the losers bracket past that. In the 12th spot, a little bit of a pretty fall dip from UIU since where they were at Fort Worth. I had them top 8, I believe, at Fort Worth, and they would not have the same kind of success that we initially had panned out. They would finish in the top 12. Okay, not bad, not great. And then beyond that, as you take a look at what they're going to be able to do here, I think that this will be a pretty solid pool for them. Heretics, Midnight, and Elevate. I have them getting into the winners bracket, which will be really nicely for their placings. But then past that, I don't have them winning a game in the winners bracket. And then they're going to have probably a pretty tough matchup in their losers bracket game as well. So for this squad, I have them going 2-1 in the pools, which will likely put them up against 100 Thieves, I believe, if 100 Thieves does what we anticipate in Pool A. Regardless, they'll be playing up against what would likely be the best team in Pool A if they finish at second in Pool D. So that's not great because Pool A is the pool of death. So unless they find a way to eke out a win in the winners bracket, this team probably finishes top 12. But again, I think that there were better options than Royalty. But Royalty is still a little bit of an upgrade, I think, from Knight. It just comes down to will Proto and Royalty get together and actually have a good SMG gameplay throughout the entire tournament, because that's where they've been weakest. In the 11th spot, I have FaZe Clan, and this might feel a little bit low for some of you, but again, you take a look at what this roster is, and I just have big question marks about it, generally speaking. Between Zero and Zuma, I think those are the biggest question marks. I think when you see Scraps and Celium and a Sim in the mix, I think that all three are going to be pretty solid, consistent performers. It just comes down to will Zuma be in the mix with that, and will Zero be able to outgun players at the ICR role in such a tough pool. Again, they'll be going up against big gunners in EG, EU, and Envy, all of which have really solid ICR players. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see what this team is able to bring together, and I very well could be undervaluing them. I just don't know if they're going to have the explosivity to get through the pool. I actually don't have them getting through the pool in the winners bracket. I have them going 1-2. And then past that, I do have them making a little bit of a losers bracket run, but it just comes down to who they will face in round 2 of the losers bracket, because their round 1 game should probably be pretty easy. It should be going up against some of those bottom 4 teams that you already see down there, and they should be able to handle those teams no problem. So I had them sitting at the 11th spot, which might be a little bit undervalued, but I don't know if I fully believe in the hype yet. I need to see this team play before I can get fully sold on it. And here's where I think you guys are not going to like me, because in the 10th spot, just above FaZe Clan, I have Heretics up here, and they have, again, been riding underneath the radar for some time. You have to remember that Heretics had a phenomenal cross-divisional as they were able to beat Evil Geniuses, Red Reserve, and Luminosity. They would lose to UYU, okay, sure, fair. And yes, their Fort Worth pools was atrocious, but they were able to find a 3-2 win versus Accelerate and a 3-1 win versus Envy before they would fall to 100 Thieves at Fort Worth. So a little bit of a loser's bracket run for this team that at Fort Worth ended up finishing, not bad at all, top 8. They finished top 8 and then went and did a 3 out of 4 in their cross div against some pretty solid opponents. This team can be good, but I still have them swinging down pretty considerably from where I had them previously, simply because I have them going 3-0 in their pool, which you would say, hey, shit, that's awesome if you really think that. But I just don't know how they're going to do up against the squad in the winners bracket. I don't see them beating any of the teams that would also meet them in the winners bracket. And then it just comes down to who do they get paired up against in the losers bracket. I think it could be tough games no matter who they face down there. So those are kind of my looks as far as how Heretics are going to be moving forward. And then finishing out the bottom 8, I've got Team Envy at number 9, which again might feel a little bit low, but this is a team that's been a little bit all over the radar. And now that they have a new roster coming into London, you wonder how well Pharaoh's going to mix in here. I think Decimate's a great pickup. Him and Hook together are going to be absolutely insane. You figure it'll be Silly and Pharaoh with the Maddox role, and then Aches will be playing ICR Maddox. And you would think that this would be a really solid team, but again, they're in a very difficult pool, which is why I have them a little bit lower than I think most people would normally rate this roster. It's simply because I don't think it's a for sure thing they get out of their pool by any stretch. Again, they're playing up against the United, a team that they've honestly done well against in the past. In fact, they've beaten them both times they've played and have not dropped a map versus United. But they're going to be going up against a good FaZe Clan team and against Evil Geniuses, which is a squad that, honestly, they did not look super great against when we saw them play previously, which was in the cross-divisional where they went 1-3 in the only time they've played up against each other. So that's one of the reasons why I have Envy a little bit lower than I think most people would. It's simply because if they do lose and don't get into the winners bracket, they're going to have to put together a pretty special run in the losers bracket. I see them winning maybe 1, maybe 2 games in the losers bracket, but that's about it. I don't see them going too much further than that. So unless they get in the winners bracket and find a favorable matchup there, I see them losing out somewhere in the top 10-ish area, top 12, top 10. Jumping over and taking a look at the top 8 teams, starting at the bottom with number 8. Again, hold your horses here. I've got Enigma 6 sitting in top 8, and This is my team that I had as being the best moves overall when it came to their roster period. And in this pool specifically, they should get beat up a little bit, but they could play spoiler. But more importantly is, if this team was not in Pool A, I see them topping potentially any of the other pools, or at least being a contender for the top of any of the other pools. I think this team's being very undervalued, and I have them making a pretty miraculous run through the losers bracket, depending on how it pans out and who they get matched up against. But I see them doing relatively well here, and I have them up there a little bit more in the standings simply because of the potential for this team to surprise come Pool A, but more importantly, come the potential of a loser's bracket run. You have to be careful for this E6 team. They've done relatively well against the likes of Optic and Reciprocity in the past. Their only big obstacle in this pool has been 100 Thieves, where they have yet to win more than 3 maps against this team in total of the 3 times that they've played. In the 7th spot, a little bit of a fall here for Splice, and a lot of people I think are overvaluing Splice just a touch in the pool that they're in. Again, they'll be playing up against Denial, Genji, and Luminosity in that order, so they should get a pretty decent warm-up versus Denial before they have to go up against what I think is one of the best teams in the game, let alone this pool, and Genji. And then Luminosity is kind of a grudge match for them. Again, they had lost to Luminosity in the winners and grand finals, but were able to beat Luminosity in their 3rd match of pool play throughout Fort Worth. So there's potential for that to also happen again, but I see them losing to both Genji and Luminosity. So based on that, that's one of the reasons why I have them falling, because they're going to have to put together a loser's bracket run, which they very well could, but it's going to be a difficult one, because based on how my predictions would go, they would be going up against Envy likely in the 2nd round of the losers bracket, and then if they beat Envy, they'd be going up against probably what would be Reciprocity maybe. It could be another big team from Pool A. So it's going to be a tough road, I think, for Splice. They need to do well, and honestly, if they want to do well in this tournament, I think they need to finish in the winners bracket. If they don't finish in the top 2 of their pool, I don't see this event going super well for them. Sitting in the 6th spot, I've got E-United, and a little bit of a jump for E-United, as I had them at 8th previously. And this E-United team, I think, will finally get their mojo running. They had a very okay, I would say, cross-divisional. They lost 2-3 to Luminosity. They won 3-2 against what was then Red Reserve, and a 3-2 versus Evil Geniuses. Again, kind of like, E-United, please, you should be doing much better than this. But they were able to find that 3-0 versus UYU. Fort Worth was tough for them. Again, they had a very tough pool as they were going up against Envy, Reciprocity, and Optic. They would only beat Reciprocity at a 3-2 scoreline there. They lost 0-3 to Envy, lost 0-3 to Optic, and then would lose in the 1st round of the losers bracket to 100 Thieves. Remember back to that insane matchup. That was a 1-3 scoreline there. So for E-United, you have a better chance to get out of pools this time around, which is why I have them boosted a little bit, simply because the Envy game, we've already seen them play up against Envy before. Yeah, it was an 0-3 both times that they've played against them, but I see them doing better. And then they've got FaZe and EG, and I have them doing better against EG, and they should be able to handle FaZe, I think, as well. So I've got them going 2-1 in the pools, and then a winner's bracket run. Won't last very long for them, but I at least have them getting to the winner's bracket and making a little bit of a push to potentially be in the top 6. In the 5th spot, I've got Optic Gaming sitting in the 5th spot. I know most of you Greenwall fans out there are going to hate that prediction, as they are actually running a little bit hot as far as their potential in the betting world to win the entire event. I'm not as optimistic, mostly because if they're going to do that, they need to make it through the winner's bracket, in the winner's side of the pool, rather, I guess I should say, to get into the winner's bracket. But that's going to be difficult to do. Again, my pool prediction video, I have this team going 2-1 in the pools, but it's very possible that they go 1-2 or potentially even 0-3, depending on how they show up the day of. Again, it's one day, all 3 matches. They've got a Nygma 6 first coming pool play. So depending on how that game goes, I think you'll see either 100 Thieves giving them a run, or maybe nobody gives them a run. But if Optic comes out and loses that first game versus Enigma 6, you have to be a little bit scared, I think, if you're a Greenwall fan, because the last time they played Reciprocity was at Fort Worth, where they lost 2-3. So a tough pool for Optic, which is one of the reasons why I have them a little bit lower down. I do have them potentially making a good losers bracket run, if not potentially also finding some success in the winners bracket, as they would likely be paired up. If they do finish 2nd in their pool, which is where I have them, they would be, by my predictions, going up against Heretics, which I have them winning, and then potentially up against the winner of what would be E-United versus Luminosity, if my predictions hold true, which is not a bad matchup for Optic. So they could make some work happen, but I don't see them getting all the way through into the winners finals. And beyond that, the late stage of the losers bracket are going to be very difficult, and there's by no means a free win anywhere in there for Optic. So I have them finishing top 6 with the potential of getting top 4 here at London. In the number 4 spot, I've got Reciprocity making a repeat run to the top 4 simply because they looked so impressive at Fort Worth. Yes, they got that essentially kind of a free win versus 100 Thieves because Priesta was out. But with the crowd behind Reciprocity, I think they're going to be finding a lot of fuel, and they're going to be doing really, really well in the playoff bracket specifically. The pools, I have them going a little bit differently. And honestly, it's really interesting to see because, again, if you remember back from my pool predictions video, I had this team going 1-2 in the pools, which would mean that I have them making an incredible run through the losers bracket, which I do. I have them going all the way through and potentially being a top 4 team. That's why I have them pinned up there. It's going to be close, though. I think between Optic and Reciprocity, one of those teams finishes top 4. It just comes down to how they fare in the pools. I think that's the best way of kind of phrasing that. In the 3rd spot, I've got Luminosity, which is a slight dip from where I had them previously at number 2. I think that we've seen with the cross div and them only going 2-2 in the cross divisional play, that this is a team that really relied on the Rampart to get them through Fort Worth. They're a little bit still weak up front in the SOG line, and they're in a pool that's going to have some great SOG gameplay, and that's where they could really be hit hard. Now, the big question comes down to, will there be any cheeky KN strategies, and will Luminosity find the ability to run the double ICR or KN, whatever, double AR backlines like they were throughout the majority of Fort Worth? I think if they are, they could be another strong team, and they could get themselves not only through the pool, but make a pretty good run throughout the entirety of the winners bracket or losers bracket, however they go. However, I still see them being a little bit below my top 2 teams, which is why I have them here. I don't see them repeating a championship, but I do have them finishing possibly top 3. My number 2 team, making it to the grand finals and not being able to win, I've got Genji. And Genji is a team that I think in this current patch, this current meta, will really start to shine because, yes, the Maddox is super strong, but beyond that, they probably have one of the best SOGs, if not the best SOG line in the CWL. Just simply because Envoy's been able to come through and play extremely well. Havoc has done very, very well. And Nagafen and Major Maniac have also been really, really solid. Mox has been a little bit overshadowed because his ICR gameplay has been overshadowed by the SMG and aggressive Maddox gameplay. But here's the biggest thing about Genji is the fact that they were able to come off of CWL Fort Worth, where they were only 4-6 in Search and Destroy. They were able to go 3-1 in Search during the cross div. They looked a lot better. And against good teams, too. A 6-5 win versus Splice, a 6-5 win versus 100 Thieves. That's good. That's absolutely great. But more importantly, they continue to be a pretty solid control team. They're 9-8 there. But the biggest fact of the matter is that they have been nearly unrivaled when it comes to their hardpoint in specific. They're 20-13 overall. And honestly, that could be looking a lot more in favor of the win column, with a couple of their losses having been at above 230-ish and still losing 230-ish to 250. So this is a very solid team. I have them finishing in the top 2, but not being better than 100 Thieves. They are my go-to predictive winners here for London. I think that this is definitely, if they were to win a tournament, this is the one that they need to win. If they were to lose this one, it would be a little bit heartbreaking, I think, for a lot of people because of how hard 100 Thieves has been grinding and how much better they've gotten since they've made the swaps. Again, you go back to their second week of divisional play. They've only lost 3 games. Let that sink in for a small moment. And really, to be honest, it only should have been 2, but they kind of choked the set versus Midnight. So here against Reciprocity, Nygma 6 and Optic, if this 100 Thieves team goes 3-0, which they could, I think you give them the championship right there. Simply because I think that between Reciprocity and Optic and Enigma 6 being in the mix, you're seeing a wide variety of who should be top contenders, who are almost the top contenders, and then a team that could surprise. If you're able to come out as 100 Thieves and beat all 3 of those categories of squads, I think your path to the grand finals should be pretty clear cut. It just comes down to, will they actually execute it? I think personally they absolutely will. So those are my power rankings for you guys. I'm sure there's a lot of hate and stuff in the chat. So feel free to get down in the comments and let me know what you think about it. Who is your top 3 winners potentially for CWL London? Let me know. I want to know. And of course, beyond that, make sure you like and subscribe and ring that little bell if you like these videos to get notifications of when they do come up. I will be uploading daily throughout CWL London, doing daily recaps, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And until next time, hope you keep holding it down. So long.